Hi and welcome. It's Ken here from LiveLink Training. In today's video I'm going to show you step by step how I made this artistic interpretation of an image of a daisy from my garden using textures, adjustment layers, masks and blending modes. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, let's close down all the layers that we don't need for the minute. There we go. So this is the start image. This is what we see, the daisy from my garden that I took. And it's got a little bit of bokeh, but I just thought I'd try and make it a little bit more interesting. So we start off with this layer. So I'll just put that on. And what I've done is I've just thought, well, I really want a nice background for this. I don't want that really harsh bokeh that was there before. So what I'm going to do is make a blurred layer. And I'm also going to make it into a smart filter as well, or a smart object, because I'm going to add a filter to it and I want to be able to go back to that filter and change it if I need to. So let's just turn that off and I'll show you how I made that. So all I've done is I've basically duplicated the background layer. So for Control and J, I can duplicate the background layer and then convert it to a smart object. So I'm going to right click on the layer and convert to smart object. And then I'm going to add the Gaussian blur filter. So I'm going to go up to filter and blur and Gaussian blur. And I'm going to put this up to something like 390 pixels. So if we're down low, we'll see you get a little bit of blur. I want quite a lot. So about 390 I thought looked not bad for this. It just blurs all the detail out and just leaves me some colours and tones. And I quite like that. So I'm going to click OK. And that, you can see, is exactly the same as the one that I produced earlier. So I'm going to now drag that into the bin and then switch that one on. And now here we are 2 layers into our project. Okay, next layer, I'll just switch this one on now. And you can see what I've done here is I've created a cutout as a mask of the flower. And I've also just cut through a little bit to show some things that were in the background, which is to give it a bit of context. So there's other daisies around here somewhere. So let's have a look at how I did that. I'll turn that off. And again, I'm just going to Control and J to create another layer. Switch that one on. And then I'll drag that mask into the bin. And I'll delete it. Okay. So now I want to create a selection. So I'm not bothered if it's quite a tight selection, because I'm going to be blending this anyway. So what I want to do is to make the selection, I'm going to go up and I'm going to use the select object, but I can only do that if I've got one of these selected, which is the tone selection tools. Doesn't matter which one. And then the select subject button appears. And I think I have a good chance of getting a good selection with this, because it's pretty blurry, and then in contrast the flower's quite sharp really. And so I'll click select subject and just wait a second and let Photoshop do its magic. And it's done a pretty good job. Missed a couple of bits here, but that's no problem. What I can do now is I can go and select another selection tool, which I'm going to select my Polygonal Lasso tool. I'm in add to selection mode. And then I'll just add these little bits that I think it's missed. And there's another one down here. There we go. I think that'll do. And now I'm going to use that selection to create a mask on this layer. So I'm going to go down to the mask icon, or the washing machine, or the dishwasher icon, whatever you like, and I'm going to click on it. And that's now going to show me a nice sharp image of me daisy, and then my nice background, which is nice and blurry. But I also want to just show a little bit of these daisies in the corner. So I'm going to make sure that I've clicked on my mask. I'm going to make sure I'm painting with black. I'm going to get a nice soft round brush. I've got 500 or 600 pixels there, and I've got quite a big brush. So all I'm going to do is make sure that my flow is very low. So I'm going down to, I don't know, 14-15%, because I don't want to be cutting right through really quickly. I just want to build the effect up. And so I can now, oh sorry, I want white as my foreground colour. That was my deliberate mistake and nobody noticed it, did they? Right, okay. We'll start from here, and I'll just couple of little swipes just to give us a little indication that there are other daisies. That'll do. Make it a little bit bigger so I can just get a nice bit of a softer edge on that. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. And you can see what I've done, that little, I've just gone round a little bit to bring a little bit of the bokeh through, to add a little bit of contrast. So the flower just stands out a little bit more. You can see that's what I did there. So I've done a little bit in this corner, and then I've gone round just to bring a little bit of contrasting. And I'm pretty cool with that. Okay, so I'll drop that one in the bin and switch that one on, which is the one that I did earlier. Okay, next I want to blur the tips of these petals a little bit. So I'm going to need to add a blur. And you can see if I show you the one that I've done, it's just blurred everything a little bit more. I've blurred all the way around the edge of the tips, and then I've cut through with the mask so I can actually see a nice sharp area in the middle, this yellow area. Okay, and I've used a smart filter again with the Gaussian blur. Okay, how did I do that? Let's just turn that off, and we'll duplicate the layer again. So we've got the background, and Control and J for duplicate, and then I can drag that one up into position, which is there. And then what I can do is make it into a smart object. So I'm going to right click, convert to smart object, and then I'm going to do filter and blur and Gaussian blur again, but this time I just want a little bit. I just want the ends of the petals just to look a little bit soft. So I would say something, ooh, maybe that's a bit too much, something like that. Okay, and I'll click OK. So I've now got my Gaussian blur, but my Gaussian blur is everywhere, and I don't want it everywhere. So I'm going to put a mask on this layer as well. But for this mask, I want a black mask, as you can see here. So instead of just clicking on the mask icon, which will give me by default a white mask, I'm going to hold the Alt key down and click. And what that's going to do is put me a black mask on. So basically it's now hiding all that adjustment that I've just made, that blur. So now to bring the bits through that I want, then what I need is white as my foreground colour, nice paintbrush, nice soft paintbrush, and then just paint in around the edge. And you'll see I'll be painting back that little bit of softness just to transition those into the middle a little bit like that. Just going round and round in a circle like that. There we go. I think that was quite okay. I'm happy with that. Okay, so what I'll do, we'll drop that one in the bin now because I don't need it there, and I'll switch the one on that I did earlier in true Blue Peter fashion. Right, next I want to add a texture, and the texture I've got here is a little bit of a grungy sort of Hessian-y texture, which I love that. So how do I do? And I've also, oh yes, I've also added, I'm getting a bit posh in my old age, Anna. I've also added a colour lookup as a smart filter. So let's just turn that off and see how I did that. So here I've got my Hessian, which is the texture, and I just drag that and drop it in and make sure it just fits, which it should. That's all right. Just make it a little bit bigger there, and then I'll got it in the wrong place, so I'll just move it up a bit. There we are. So we've now got our Hessian, and it automatically converts it to a smart object if you use the libraries panel, which I do for keeping all my textures in. If you don't, then what you'd have to do is load it for File and Place Embedded, and that will convert it to a smart object for you as well. But I'd now like to add a colour lookup, but I want to do it non-destructively. So I'm going to do this as a smart filter. So I'm going to go to Image and Adjustments and Colour Lookup. And the one that I'm going to choose is one right down at the bottom, this teal orange plus contrast. I really like that one, and it gives me a nice tealy orangey sort of colour that I think is really good. And I'm going to click OK. But now I need to mask through, because I don't want the colour and the texture to be on the central part of the flower, the yellow part. So what I need to do is to add a mask to this layer again, and I want a white mask, so I'm just going to click on the mask icon. And then I'm going to choose black as my foreground colour, my little brush. I'll just drop the opacity a little bit so I can see where it is. There it is. And I'm just going to bring that detail through, something like that, and that should be okay. When I go back to 100, there we go. Now it looks a bit weird here, and that's because I've got a blend mode on there, and I've set that to overlay, and the opacity to about 50%. So if I click back on that layer again, we'll go back to overlay, well, overlay or soft light. Now I think overlay is probably the best one, and then we'll drop the opacity, because it's a bit too much, to about 50%, something like that, just so I can see it. Yeah, I think that looks okay. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, we'll drop that one in the bin then. We've finished with that, and then I'll bring back the one that I made earlier, which is that one. Okay, now I'm looking at it, and I think I'd like to add a little bit of colour. So what I've got is a colour adjustment layer. So if I open that up, you'll see that I've now got like a light brown colour adjustment layer. If I double click on that, you can see that the HSB values are 35, 62 and 97, and that gives me like a light browny sort of colour. And I click OK, and I'm happy with that. But again, I don't necessarily want the colour over everything, so what I can do is I can make another mask. And if you've already got a mask, then you could copy it. So rather than keep making multiple masks, if you hold the Alt key down and click and drag, you can copy drag that mask onto a different layer. There we go. And I need the same one on each of these anyway, because it's the same area that I want to cut through. Okay, next I want to do a little bit of colour grading again. So what I did was I put in a colour lookup table again. And this was from Image, Adjustments and the colour lookup there. But once it's in there, I can double click on it, and this time I use the soft warming look colour lookup. So if I click that little drop down there, it's right down at the bottom, this soft warming look. You can choose any of these, but for this one I thought this one was in keeping and it looked okay. Back to my layers panel, and then just to give me a little bit of control, if I wanted to ease this off a little bit, if it was a bit too much or a bit too warm, I've put a vibrance adjustment layer in, and the vibrance adjustment layer is down at the bottom here, and you click vibrance. And that puts the adjustment layer on, and then I double click, because each adjustment layer's got two parts. It's got the adjustment, which is this little symbol here, and it's got the mask. So if I want to see what the adjustment is in the properties panel, I double click there. And here I can see I've just backed off the vibrance and backed off the saturation a little bit, just to knock the edge off it. And I think that looks a little bit more pinky, and I quite like that. Finally, I want to put another texture on, and the texture that I want on is what I call my vignette texture. And there it is. It just darkens down the outside, and I'm liking that. And I've put it on as a soft light, blend mode and about 50%. And so I'll just take that off and I'll show you how I did that. So I grabbed my vignette texture and dragged and dropped it in, made sure it fits. I've got nothing hanging out the sides like that. There we go. And then I think I said I've gone for a soft light, I think, on that. Was it a soft light? Let me have a look on that one. Yes, it was. It was a soft light and about 50%. So I'll just press a 5 on the keyboard to get me to 50%. And then of course I may not want it on here. You might, but for me I don't. So I'm going to use this mask again. So I'm going to hold the Alt key down, click and drag, and drop that on there so this centerpiece comes through. And I think we're going in a good direction. I'm quite happy with that. So now I can drag this one into the bin because I don't need it, and this is the one that I made earlier. Now, a couple of things to finish off. I think I always like to put a little 1 or 2 pixel line or a stroke around the edge. But if I do that when I've got blend modes, they tend to interfere with it a little bit. But I need something to hang it onto. If I try with this to put a stroke on, the mask and the blend modes and everything will interfere with it, and it'll be missing from one of the sides. So what I do is I just make a new empty layer, which is this. I'll fill it with a 50% grey, which is a neutral grey, and then I change the blend mode to overlay. So you'll see if that's normal where I see me grey, then if I change that to overlay, then it disappears. The pixels are still there, and now I can hang a border on the pixels. So what I've done is I've put a stroke on there. So the way I did that, I added a new empty layer. I filled it with 50% grey. So I'm going to go to my edit menu and fill. And in this contents area, I'm going to choose 50% grey. And then I'm going to click OK. And then so I can see through, because basically these two blending modes, overlay and soft light, can't see mid grey. So if I select either one of them, I can see through it, and that's looking good. What did I have? Yep, I've got 100% on there and 100% on there, but it's still, that's my final image that I like. And then I can now add my stroke onto there, and it comes up lovely on either side. So my stroke now, I've got inside, and this is 4 pixels. That's quite all right. Blend mode, opacity 100%, and color white, and I'm happy with that. And then I click OK. And then to finish it off completely, I just want a little title. So I've just created a text layer in which I've said Daisy. Okay, that's it for how I created an arty look to a daisy from my garden. So what did we do? Well, we used smart objects, so our filter effects were non-destructive and totally reversible. We added textures and changed the blend modes and opacity to get ourselves a good effect. And we added masks to selectively hide and reveal parts of the layers. All part of our daily Photoshop routine. I do hope you found it useful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment under the video in the more area. And if you get a chance, please click the subscribe button and become part of my Photoshop learning community. For more videos on Photoshop, Lightroom and photography, please visit my website, livelinktraining.com. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.